OOCS into a Wider Galaxy, Part 366, Capes and Conundrums. Blazing Iron was about as pleasant as getting hit with his namesake. At first, after he had time to grab himself a large pack of pastries, a copy of his movie, and just sit down and relax in safety with a full stomach, he calmed down and started answering questions in between dramatic moments of what was clearly a long-time favorite film. "So you can't think of anyone who would want you dead?" Brutality asks. "Look, I know I'm not the most popular sort, but I haven't made a personal enemy. I pay my rent. I don't go out of my way to be rougher than I have to one type or another, even if some types are way more annoying than they have to be. Everyone caught where they're not supposed to be gets hauled out, and if they start fighting or break things, they get to meet my former coworkers and usually walk away with a fine. I'm not the problem." Someone seems to disagree. "That's their problem," Blazing Iron says. "Yes, and they've made it yours. We need to—" Brutality begins to say before Blazing Iron holds up his hand to pause the conversation as the movie reaches the point where a door is kicked in and the second body hollowed out is found. Brutality tactfully does not mention that he can spot the actual differences between a bioprinted body that had been dried out before ever living and an actually hollowed person. Still, he has to give the filmmakers credit for going that far for a prop. Blazing Iron then pauses and points to the looks of horror across the faces of the characters. "Look at that. See there? That's some damn acting. So many chumps sleepwalk through their scenes, but look at these guys. You'd swear that was their own mother there on the ground from those faces. The youthful bull, please. While I doubt it's connected to why we were looking into you to begin in, I cannot condone letting a potential murderer run around. Have you thrown out anyone or done anything unusual of late?" "Nothing weird. I did feel on edge today. Not able to relax. But that just means I needed some time with Lacey McCore's best hits. Fan of hers. She improves everything she's in. Put her in a perfect movie, and the movie is better than perfect. She's the best actor for every role. If I was filming my life story, I'd try to tag her in to do me, because she could do me better than me," Blazing Iron explains with a grin. "Now let me finish this, and we'll finish this talk. You're remarkably controlled for someone who's just dodged death. I live on Scathach. If I sleepwalk too hard, I'll die." Blazing Iron dismisses. Scene change. Harold and his family. "So what do you think?" Harold asks as they return to the city. "Me? Am I the one you're speaking to?" Winterfred asks. "Yes." "And about what do you want me to think?" she asks. "All this. The family. I'm not the type to just have fun and leave someone burning for me," Harold says, and Winterfred considers. "The deal is too good. What do you see in me that you offer this? I'm surrounded by warriors, hunters, weapon masters, and that's putting aside that you're clearly living up to the undaunted stereotype." "The stereotype?" "Crazy in a way that makes sense if you stop trying to make sense of it," Winterfred says with a smirk. "No, it's not." "Fine. The stereotype is that you're warrior men who expect to compete for pussy and are surprised when we're just as eager for the dick. That you men are sentimental, grow attached too easily for your own good, and hold on way too tight to be rational," she says. "Honestly, it's one of the reasons I slept on it. You boys seem too much everything. Then it stayed consistent. It's not rumor, is it?" "No, it's not," Giria notes. "Don't let the attitude and willingness to fight fool you. He's just as much a sap as the rumors paint his species, and he's far from the worst one. We ran into another human who makes him look cold and loveless by compare." "Really?" "Oh, yes. It was almost uncomfortable how loving they were." "Yeah, Vernon's a bit of a weirdo." He says that without a hint of irony, you'll note. Giria states, and Harold turns to give her an even look. She smiles in return. "While interesting, it does not answer as to what you plan to do with me, or how I would fit in with you all. This has been fun, but I am thoroughly out of my depth," Winterfred notes calmly. "It won't take long to get the money I need to hibernate through the pangs of want when this is over. So?" "Just like that? Really?" Jabra asks, and Winterfred shrugs. "You're thinking of some kind of test, aren't you? I don't know your reputation's out of hand, but Giria is apparently a devastation, a descendant of one of the war primals. I believe your claim of being a monster hunter Javra. Uma is a Takra, so she'll want a test. Agatha is a crimson hewer, enough said. Dumaya clearly has a habit of making bigger and better weapons. I don't know what velocity is, but she handled an unfamiliar weapon like she was born to it. And even if Harold just wants a second big furry girl to cuddle, I don't think I rate the same sort of attention, Winterfred says. So is the issue that you don't trust any tests we might put in your path, or that you are not so attached to Harold to find it worthwhile? The three of you that I am certain of culture-wise come from cultures that value lifelong service and combat experience. I don't have any reason to think the rest of you are any different, which means I'll be out of my depth, or the test will have some hidden meaning that even if I win, I lose, like those dumb loyalty tests where someone fakes a kidnapping to see if you break under an interrogation. You've been watching movies recently. Some need something to do between jobs when you can't sleep, Winifred says. I see, Giria notes. I was actually thinking about something else than what you're assuming test-wise. So you were planning a test? Of course. Everyone has a place in a family, and as first wife, it is my duty to ensure we all have a place. But there is an area we've been neglecting. And that would be logistical, or more specifically, are you going to say cook? Winifred asks, looking surprised. More or less. You're strong, practical, and have a species-wide love of a good meal and immense patience. Not to mention, with so many more wild or hot-running personalities, we need someone to be more grounded, Giria says, and Javra lets out a slightly annoyed noise. Do you disagree, Javra? Not entirely, but I don't think I should let a potential insult go unanswered, Javra says, and Giria nods. I need some time to think. A quick jump into fun is one thing. A follow-up with the family puts things into perspective. But fully committing, I need to think. Just to make sure there's no misunderstanding, what are you thinking on? Harold asked to get ahead of potential drama. Whether I fit in with this group enough to consider leaving the life I have here behind. You're more mobile than I am, so I would no doubt start living on a ship if I were to join you, which is a change. There's also the consideration that you all live fast-paced lives. Not sure I can keep up, or what I'd wake up to when I next hibernate. All right, so I have your contact information. When we get information about when we're leaving, I'll let you have it too. That'll give you your deadline, Harold says, and Winifred nods as the skiff comes down for a landing. Winifred disembarks and offers them all a friendly wave. Thank you for the wonderful time. It's been fascinating and fun. I need to do some thinking now. She receives friendly waves back and then turns to start walking away. She's certainly different, Uma remarks. And Asadub are very strong and patient people. But I don't know, she doesn't seem to be a fighter. But she was able to puzzle out Miss Sneaky here a bit. Just by paying attention. Back in the tribe, that's the kind of girl who tracked birds that passed by days ago, Javra says. Or the kind of girl that makes the personal gear for the war chief, Dumia adds. So that's 2 votes for her? Giria asks. Attention to detail or not, she's not a fighter. We need to stick to fighters. We find trouble so easily, and I don't think it's going to calm down when we leave the inevitable, Uma says. She's passive. I get wanting someone calm around, but we don't exactly fly off the rails enough to require it, Agatha says. She started figuring me out, Velocity says after a few moments. Are you counting that as for or against her? Giria asks. I don't know, Velocity admits. That level of observation is good to have on side, but if it never ends, it will just be annoying. So we're tied, Giria notes in an amused tone, unless Harold is going to do something other than abstain. I think I need to think a bit too. Seducing someone and letting them down gently is one thing. Another wife is another. Maybe you seem to get along well with her. She's very stable and reliable. But she isn't a fighter. She might not enjoy going out and doing the things we do, Harold says in a pensive tone. Well, if he makes up his mind, switch my vote so we're still tied, Velocity says, and Harold gives her a look. Yes, I'm being petty, haha. My campaign to calm the Vishanyan people is backfiring on me, Harold notes. Scene change, Nightwings and Ace. Clear run, my game, Nightwing says, and Ace sticks out her tongue at him. He gathers up the cards again before both of them pause and turn as they hear something. Ace starts sniffing as Nightwing's ears perk up and start angling over and over to try and triangulate what's going on. Nightwing starts moving, and Ace is right behind him as they rush to the side of the building and look down to see a pair of delivery drones contort and fuse together before dipping into a package and leaving with a prepped and loaded railgun. Ace nods to the women they've been following, and Nightwing's nods before taking off and angling for a swoop to intercept the shot now aiming at Moni Toyren as Ace pounces down onto the drone from above. Get down! Nightwings calls down, and Moni looks up and her eyes widen even as Ace hits the drone. It fires. The sonic boom feels like a sledgehammer into both sides of the head to the siblings, and his dive sweeps the Alfar woman into safety before another subsonic round slams into where she was. Then there are a pair of explosions, one of which in the distance, the other suppressed as Ace has enough skill in force field generation to bottle the explosion and direct the sheer force away from herself and anything else. Unfortunately, it pulps the remains of the drone even more. Nightwings vanishes into the shadows and reappears near to Ace, who gives him a slightly guilty look as there is no part of her captured drone that is larger than a fingernail and unburnt by the heat of the blast. Okay, what just happened? Moni asks as there seems to be a break in the excitement and Nightwings lets her go. Ace signs that she and her brother were playing cards nearby when they heard something suspicious and saw a pair of drones arming themselves and taking aim at her. Okay, why me? Moni asks, and Ace seems surprised. Yes, I can understand you. We don't know why you, Nightwing says. Not about that. Why were you two following me? Moni asks, and Ace shares a look with Nightwings. Yes, I saw you both earlier. I know I was being followed. Why? We're trying to figure something out. You're potentially part of it, so we were keeping an eye on you in case there was some obvious sign we just needed to be patient to see. What kind of sign? Evil laughter, open gloating, peeling off your face to reveal that you're someone else in disguise? It could go anywhere. We're allowed to watch people in public areas. It's when we start poking into your private life that things become illegal. Otherwise, your job would have some issues, little Miss Detective, Nightwing says. I know where the line between legal investigation and stalking is, unlike most. Money states, and Nightwing shrugs, and Ace condescendingly pats her on the head as if she was a child. OOCS Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 367, Capes and Conundrums. Money? The hell is going on? Blazing Iron asks as she shows up. So she's the second person we're investigating that someone has tried to kill. Brutality states. What, someone tried to kill him? Who'd you rough up this time? Moni asks. What makes you think I made this happen? I do my job, and if people have a problem with it, then they shouldn't be breaking all the rules. Blazing Iron counters. Right, in the stack of citations for excessive force just appeared out of nowhere? Something like that, Blazing Iron says, and Moni puts her hands on her hips and glares at him. Get off me half size. Babying criminals is the sort of thing that makes them treat their time behind bars like a vacation instead of a punishment. The job was to detain and prevent further criminal actions, not pass judgment. And the fact that... Is this really the time? Brutality asked pointedly. Probably not. So, I assume that there's something a whole lot bigger going around and mucking with whatever you're trying to pull, and me and Moni here getting fried and tossed in a trench will get in the way of that. Actually, we can conclusively consider you both off the suspect list now, so us keeping you two safe is more us not wanting bodies in the street. Brutality lies. No better way to get someone hiding something to slip up than making them think they've gotten away with it. What are you investigating to begin with? Moni asks. Someone is doing everything they can to get in the way of my designs, Hafid says dramatically as he swoops down from above. Blazing Iron openly groans in frustration at the theatrics. 1 hour. I want 1 hour with other people that don't involve no drama queens. Is that really too much? Blazing Iron asks in frustration. Very well then. I am Hafid Wayne. I have founded and funded several conservation efforts across the galaxy, and my local efforts are being stymied. We were looking into potential malefactors when we intercepted your attempted assassinations. Just us? I highly doubt your investigations led to just me and the youthful bull here. Moni states and Hafid nods. Very astute. Both of you used services that paid for local workers to destroy the remains of the natives. If such an act is carried out to the end, then it could potentially be used to invalidate the claim that this is the homeworld of the native peoples. Planetary theft, Blazing Iron asks in shock, and potential cultural genocide. Even if the DNA is stored and the people get revived, they'd have no way to regain their culture and species. Not sure it can count as genocide if the people are already dead. Blazing Iron notes, then sighs. But it is still a complete scumbag thing to do. Who else are you watching? Some other people. But we know that the order that sent out the cash for payments and such came from the same building. The mayor's office? Blazing Iron asks. Yes, you are of course there, as are our other suspects. However, Moni here was the outsider that was there at the right time. Suspicious, so we put our eyes on you. And now, someone's trying to whack us? Blazing Iron says and Moni considers. Do you think your presence here might have destabilized things? She asks. It's our estimation, yes, Hafid admits. It is assumed that my unexpected arrival is causing a panic in the extinction-obsessed Cretan. And they're reacting, Moni considers. And I'm guessing that putting the screws to the hired goons didn't get anything? No, they were given burner communicators and anonymous payments in coin through a basic delivery system. Brutality states. What? Waste of time. If they really want things separate, they could have it written down. If you want to cover your tracks, you don't let it have an electronic link. That's sloppy, Blazing Iron states. Oh, please, like you can't trace things through the physical clues left on such a thing. Only if you're sloppy. Pair of gloves that you can buy at any corner store. Rent a basic printer to print it off, and then use a basic stick of glue for the envelope. And things just got hard enough for forensics to tell you you're wasting time. Blazing Iron says. The Finnegan case? Moni asks. The freaking Finnegan case? Blazing Iron agrees. What was the Finnegan case? Brutality asks. A whole load of none of your business, Blazing Iron says. A bombing case 4 years ago, Moni says. We didn't catch any breaks until we found one before it could go off, only to learn our bomber was smarter than we hoped, using gloves and working on the bomb in a sterile environment while covered up. God, that was a mess, Blazing Iron states and Brutality nods. If these two are suspects, then they're doing a good job of hiding it. If not, then he should keep focused. Scene change. Santiago and Shadowflight. He sways from side to side as part of Shadowflight's newest project is playing. The soundtrack for her creation has a bopping little beat that puts in mind some memories of jazz, but in electronic tones. So I take it you like it? Shadowflight asks and he nods. It's certainly the type of thing to get a man moving. Is there anything you're aiming for in specific? He asks her and she considers. Movement is the general idea. This is the baseline of the battle theme for the RPG. Specific enemy types will have additional tones to give it some spice. And finally, there's a flourish for more powerful enemies. Mini-bosses, full bosses, and chapter bosses have the whole thing at once, with one exception. And the exception is the surprise twist boss. Basically, a character bouncing around is an ancient guardian that took Senir form to live a little before being sacrificed to save the world. They've gathered their own power and are testing themselves against the main character. Whoever wins gets the loser's power, so it's a question of who gets to save the world, because they can't team up to do it, and they can't do it without the other's power. Okay, is there an option to play as a twist boss if they win? Not yet. I want to complete the main story first, but I think there should be an after-story add-on, what if scenario, where you control the boss instead. Interesting. How are they usually found during the game? Drinking, partying, playing with children. They've basically come to life for the first time in all of forever and want to understand the world they're destined to die to save. Then they find at the end they want to keep living, hence the fight. Until then, though, he's a running gag that keeps showing up with weird eyes. Neat. What about personality? I'm trying to get him to come across like a person who was very serious and is snapped to let loose and unable to take things seriously. You can talk to them and force them to take things seriously. And then he gives seriously useful hints about shortcuts and enemy weaknesses. But you need to basically slap him in the face to get him to tell you. Well, you certainly have my attention, and Santiago pauses even as Shadowflight turns. Both of them go quiet and she backs up her data on the network before shutting off her computer, and they slink through the apartment. Shadowflight jumps up to the ceiling and Santiago goes to the side of the door, just in time for someone to force it open and bring a weapon out. But Santiago slams it shut so hard he cracks the frame of the weapon and then opens it again, having effectively disarmed them to allow Shadowflight to pounce on them from the outside. Even as she pounces on the attacker, Santiago teleports into the hallway outside of her apartment, and instantly his arm snaps out to crush a coil gun between his fingers. The attacker abandons the weapon and starts running, but the big man is faster than he is large, and his fingers next wrap around her neck. There is a crack as Shadowflight slams the head of the Tret woman into the floor and knocks her out. Santiago brings his captured prisoner close. "So, who are you?" Santiago asks the woman. Her hair is a green fire that tries and fails to burn him, so that would make her an Aramenta. "Screw you," she says, and he starts to gently squeeze the back of her neck. Then it becomes slowly less gentle, and she starts trying to thrash. Interestingly, she doesn't try to teleport. "Shadowflight, do you still have those knives you made? The ones with blunt edges? Why do you want blunted knives?" "They hurt more." Santiago growls deep and low, and the Aramenta lets out a whimper. "Unless, of course, someone wants to talk?" Okay, just calm down. This wasn't supposed to go like this," the thug protests. "Wasn't it? You and your friend booted in the door with weapons out. Who are you and what the hell did you think you were going to accomplish?" "Just relax. Relax. Why isn't your hand getting cooked?" "I live on Scathach, lady. If not for the ash, I'd go out into the trenches without sweating." Oh shit, you're undaunted. I didn't know. I just got an address and a time. Show up and spray everything moving with coil shot. I didn't know. I did not know." "Who gave you the address and time?" Santiago presses. "The boss. She just told us to." "And your boss is?" "No way, human. I'm not a snitch." She protests and Santiago smiles. "Why are you smiling?" "I get to feed you to the streams. They'll pull you apart for me," Santiago says as he reaches into his pocket and pulls out his communicator. "Hello, Control. A pair of thugs just tried to attack us while I was at Shadowflight's apartment. Mind sending some heavies to drag them into a cell so that the streams can pull them apart at their leisure?" Moondram. The Aramenta tries thrashing, but a heavy shake followed by a knockout effect stops her from doing anything stupid. "Well, that was exciting," Shadowflight notes. "Oh, it's like we're in an episode of the series. I wonder if we're in A plot or B plot. Could go either way, but I doubt it'll be solved in a half hour or so," Santiago says as he gently puts down the fire Aramenta and slowly goes through the Axiom technique to repair things and fixes her partially broken door, and she tests it to find that it still locks and unlocks easily enough. "Thanks, big guy," she says before looking down at the thug she took down. "Think I hit her too hard?" "She's at least got a second-degree concussion, otherwise she'd be up by now," Santiago says before there is a twist of Axiom and there are several more people there. 2 Canadors and a small prosthetic body with unfamiliar but familiar white eyes. Well, things are interesting. I rate the head. I'm on an agent shift and told to pay attention to Scathach. The endless streams are everywhere, Herbert says as he walks up and checks the fire Aramenta, then the Tret. She's going to need a lay down in a hospital bed. That was a hell of a smack she took. Sorry. Shadowflight and she gets a smile that downright shines from the young man. Not to worry, the important thing is the good guys got away clean. And you did. Everything else is just a treat. So thanks for the treats, Bat Lady. Batwoman, but you're welcome, Shadowflight says with a smile. Charmed and knowing she's being charmed. But it's hard to mind it when it comes from a friend who's just being friendly. Even when you know you're being manipulated by the little bugger, It's hard to stop it from happening. Anyways, we'll get these girls trussed up and figure them out. Unless something weird happens, we'll have the answer soon. "'Kay, bye," he says with a wave before the canadors grab a different thug each, and then all three vanish at once. So who do you think they were after? "Oh, probably you, big guy. I'm just some girl," Shadowflight says, taking a cutsy pose and fluttering her eyes up at him, and he snorts. OOCS Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 368, Capes and Conundrums. "You're kinda dumb, aren't you?" Herbert asks the fire Aramenta incredulously. She glares at him. "The big information you're trying to hide is that Flaming Betty, leg breaker to Miss Mangler, takes orders from Miss Mangler." "Really? What makes you think that we wouldn't figure that out? I'm trying to figure out some way this makes sense, and I just can't. What am I missing here?" She growls. "Oh, scary lady. Grr, ar." "In an actual language, please," Herbert says, and she snorts. "Well, not like it matters. I'm going to Miss Mangler and tell her you sent me Betty." "You wouldn't." "Why wouldn't I? I need information. If I can't talk it out of you, I'll talk it out of her. And she'll know it's because you won't talk. Talking is what gets me into trouble. And not talking also gets you into trouble," Herbert answers, and she tries to think of a way out. Herbert raises an eyebrow as her solution to the problem is apparently fire, and his clothing starts to smolder. Then he smiles. "Sorry, lady. The prosthetics on this world are fireproof, for obvious reasons. Not to mention, I'm in contact with the others. If you somehow break or burn my little robot body, then an alert goes up and you get buried in angry soldiers with fireproofing axiom effects. I want my lawyer. You're supposed to ask for that earlier, but it won't work. We're not a police force. This is a military base. I can make you go bye-bye, and there's nothing the legal teams can do about that," Herbert says, and she glares at him. Besides, the only lawyer nearby is also a sniper, and he's been reporting something interesting. "Oh yeah? What?" "That some ladies have been following him," Herbert says. "Some ladies that are also part of Miss Mangler's gang." She says nothing. "You're not going anywhere until you either tell me what I want to know or convince me you're truly ignorant. And if you're ignorant, you're going to the police for attempted murder," Herbert says. "That's not fair." "Not fair? Lady, I'm the child in the room." Scene change, Robin White. He sips his coffee as he watches the thugs far below. The fact that so many people don't reflexively look up while living in a high-rise city full of bat people is flabbergasting, but still useful. With his other hand, he zooms in with his communicator's camera function and waits to get a proper mugshot. They had been identified as being from Miss Mangler's gang, but that was from the air car they had piled out of. The plates were known to be tied into criminal activities, mostly bootleg licenses for hunting the serpents, in addition to normal crimes like weapon smuggling, drug pushing, and a few protection rackets. According to intelligence, Miss Mangler had more than a few officials in the pocket, and pressing them at this point will more likely just get the undaunted booted off of Scadak. He manages to get a face shot of one of them, and then shifts to another building. It takes him a minute, but he gets her face too. It almost feels unfair for the thugs to be cute. Ah, well, axiom means they hit even harder than steroid pusher on Earth. Robin notes to himself before feeling eyes on him. He has just enough time to brace himself as someone crashes into him. There is a loud screech from the Sonier woman that slams him into a gargoyle and shatters it beneath him. A punch to the side of the head from the left briefly distracts the Batwoman, and he has enough time to shift positions and jump away. He grabs another gargoyle and lands well before drawing a rifle. He then ducks back to avoid barely subsonic coil rounds and raises his eyebrows at that. Someone is hunting thermal-proof targets. Or they're trying to get around undaunted brands, and that is dangerous. He merely points his rifle at the returning Sonier, and she veers away. He lets out a little hum of appreciation. Whoever this is, and whatever reason they're hunting him, they're not suicidal. That's when the first Tret thug reaches him by jumping from below, and she brings up her pistol. He doesn't hesitate. She eats a burst directly into the chest. "Danny!" the other cries in despair. "You bastard!" Robin doesn't bother to answer as he has to ward off the Sonier again. She had started to swoop in after he had been distracted dispatching the first thug. Robin can feel certain concerns just shut down. He's had to kill. Mercy's off the table. The problem is that the Sonier is paying much more attention to him. The moment he gets a proper lead and aim at her, she dodges. She dodges right at the moment his finger starts to pull the trigger. He's forced to abandon a couple of shots as she's listening to the mechanics of his gun and twisting the moment he even thinks of taking a shot. Competent enemies are a pain. He shifts to the side and levels his weapon at the thug on the next level down who's trying to resuscitate a corpse. She's busy. He leans back and takes the moment to pull out his communicator. Something then slams into him, and he's sent sprawling back with a grinding sound from his rifle. A quick check finds several parts have been bent badly, and adrenaline is crashing through his system to counter the pain of what hit him. "Subsonic scream," he says to himself, then switches to the side as the Sonier is back and lands nearly on him and starts swinging before her mouth opens, and the ash in the air scatters on the wave of the next scream. The vibrations slam into his brain and he's out cold before he even loses balance. Scene change, Scout Maripol. It's just a dumb reflex. It doesn't help her see. It's not even a proper emotional reaction, but something she learned hanging around the fully solid. From within herself, she activates the communicator. Yelling backwards and hiding away from sight. Shit, the Sonier's coming. She phases out and slips into the building to get out of echolocation range. "Miss Maripol, what's going on?" the communicator says in the small air pocket she made around it. "Mr. White is down. I don't know if he's alive or unconscious, but I saw him drop." She answers by vibrating the walls near the receiver. "Are you at his location?" 50 meters away, up 2 stories. He's to the right if the street is being faced, she explains. "Understood. Any visibility injuries?" Currently avoiding his attacker, I will check at my earliest convenience, she says as she sticks a tendril of gel to the nearest wall and phases it through to slowly stick it out and look out and around. He's being taken captive by a Tret woman. "Do you have an ID on her?" "I do not recognize her. Brown curly hair, thick reinforced clothing, obviously armed and pale-skinned." "Is she heading to an air car with brown coloring and blue highlights?" "She is." "Okay, so I'm about to read out a number. If it matches the plating on the car, then we can keep you close to it with ease." "All right, I'm ready." "Nope, Sonier's back," Scout states as she retreats back into the building, and the Sonier phases through the wall after her, and she retreats with dozens of tendrils acting as limbs to move fast. The Sonier sweeps out through the solid matter directly after her and outright splits herself to make a huge hole in the middle and let the woman pass through without harm. The Sonier flaps hard to get control of her flight even as Scout reforms behind her. There is something hungry in the Sonier's eye as she turns her head to glare at her. "So I'm sensing some hostility." Scout mocks her and then pulls herself to the side with dozens of tendrils to avoid a sonic scream. She pulls everything that isn't gel into a folded space inside her and spreads out, thinning her presence until she's a shifting orange shimmer that slides over the building and starts rushing for the Tret carrying Robin. Scout's gel shifts to the side in massive arcs to create holes around where the sonic screams of the now strafing Sonier hit and avoid any harm at all before hurling herself at the air car. The Sonier outright teleports in front of Scout and starts forcing her back, but she brings in more and more mass to fight against the sheer force of the sonic attack. The Sonier phases through things and dives right at the Sonier, who has the correct reaction in diving right at her, so that her phasing allows the Sonier to pass. But slopes don't have any singular angle or direction. More tendrils launch out and backwards to grab onto the Sonier's foot, and she continues flying as hard as she possibly can, carrying Scout with her for a moment before the orange slobe realizes she's been had and lets go before launching tendrils at the buildings to chase the air car. The Sonier is still on her, though, and Scout grabs onto an air car going in the same direction to up her speed and then starts launching tendrils like grappling hooks from one car to another to try and catch up to the air car. She launches herself forward but the car starts going the other way, forcing Scout to lose some speed in a wide swing to try and stay on target. The Sonier cuts the line of her gel, and Scout reorients her entire being before launching another tendril at the trailing piece of herself. Her aim is good, and she shifts her entire mass up the line to congeal on the bottom of an air car, going the right direction, then shifts to ooze onto the top in a single fluid movement. She's not bothering with any details beyond a lithe, vaguely feminine female shape, and doesn't bother turning, just shifting her mass to reorient and keep the wind from sweeping her off. She slips down and reorients to hanging off the bottom of the car as the Sonia returns to try and swipe at her again. She then launches a tendril at another air car to keep closing in on the other air car, which appears to have finally caught on that it's being followed. It takes a sudden left turn, and Scout follows. She compresses herself into a tiny sphere to preserve her momentum and phases to dodge the massive scream from the Sonier, before expanding again and then launching several tendrils to pull herself harder than before. She barely misses the air car and manages to snag another going the same way. Unfortunately, she was obvious about this one, and the driver slams on the brakes so hard it can be heard casually from outside the vehicle. This sends Scout flying, and she has to grab another that she pulls herself up to a bit more carefully and avoids freaking out the driver, which is why the Sonier dives directly at the air car and causes the driver to swerve even as Scout launches another tendril to try and get another vehicle. This time she gets it by the side, and there's no hiding that she's riding along. So she points with her arm towards the one she's chasing, and the Tret woman inside nods. Scout currently doesn't have a face. It's not very aerodynamic. But if she did, she'd be smiling from ear to ear as the distance closes. Then the Sonier returns and she covers the entire vehicle before phasing everything, including the driver. She shifts the colors over the window to the side. "Keep going. My friend has been kidnapped," she spells out, and the Tret's eyes widen before nodding and hitting the accelerator even faster. Which is easy, consider that wind resistance is no longer a concern. She shifts the message to "thank you," then launches a tendril at the retreating car and latches on before shifting her mass up the line as fast as she can, barely dodging the Sonier trying to cut her off again, and fully manifesting along the underside of the air car. She shifts opacity as she alters the makeup of her gel, and then plunges hardened tendrils through the protective armor and into the delicate components of the air car and shredding everything she can. Axiom surges as she rips chunks of Kutha away from each other and severs tri-tight barriers to completely destroy the engine and rip the whole thing out of the sky. She then shifts and alters her form to grab out at nearby buildings to bleed momentum like numerous safety tethers, even as the Sonier dives in again. She starts letting go before the lines can be severed and puts herself in the way of the car and the ground. She then expands and uses a huge amount of mass to catch the falling air car and then slips it into an expanded space right near the core and then shrinks down again before diving for the power lines under the road. The Sonier finally breaks her silence and screams in frustration while swearing about bullshit physical anatomy and how the hell anyone is supposed to deal with that kind of pain and webbing. Scout fights down a cackle as she launches herself along and makes for an undaunted controlled area. OOCS, Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 369. Capes and Conundrums. Reality comes back slowly, as if unconsciousness was a sticky thing to be peeled off bit by bit, which is weird as it's normally like a blanket he can just throw off. His positioning is weird, and Robin jerks upwards and finds that he's being carried in Scout's arms. "Morning, darling. How's my dandy in distress doing?" she asks, and Robin's mind spins. "Okay, how much do I have to pay you? Or what do I have to do for this to stay between us?" "That's a bold proposition, my little dandy. And it's too late. We're on camera," she says, nodding with her head, and he looks. There is Pavel providing overwatch, meaning this is on official record. "So I take it that if you had teeth, I'd be seeing all of them right now?" "Oh yes, smiling ear to ear, little man," Scout says, and he chuckles. "So what happened after I ate that scream?" "I was already on the block and approaching, but Miss Flappy is a hell of a fighter. I mean, she's pretty stereotypical for her kind. Flyby attacks, sonic screams, and a lot of speed. But predictable is only easy to deal with if you can actually deal with what's coming, she explains. I see. Can you let me down now? What's the matter? Don't like being carried by your savior? No, I consider this emasculating. Please let me down, Miss Marable, he says, and she sets him down on his feet. Thank you. We're heading to medical after I drop off the prisoner I took. You took a shot directly in the brain. There's no amount of training that can make that organ more resilient to getting punched by a sound wave, Scout says. No kidding. But how are you holding the prisoner? Expanded pocket? That's right. And don't worry. I'm shifting the air in there and recycling it while carrying me and maintaining a highly detailed bipedal shape. As I keep my gel from baking solid or absorbing the ashes around us, while keeping track of the area, and there's maintaining the pocket as well. And holding this conversation, Robin adds, aren't I just amazing? Okay, dial it back. Smug is a bad look no matter who you are. I disagree, Scout states. I'm sure you do, Robin replies. Scene change, Miss Mangler. The pruning shears snip at the excess growth in the greenhouse garden. Fed by the ashes of scathach and imported potting soil from her homeworld, it was a blend of where she had come from and where she had built her empire. A frown creases her face when another presence starts disturbing the air in here. And who exactly thinks themselves so untouchable that they would risk my wrath? Your girls have been on the attack. Why? A male voice answers, and she pegs it as one of those undaunted types. This isn't good. Those freaks go hard and not in the fun way. Okay, yes, in the fun way, but not with a girl like her. If my girls are on the attack, it's because someone's muscling in on my territory, she answers easily. Really? Because I have some orders here from you that start at your personal console, that give out a hit list, including Blazing Iron, the Youthful Bull, Investigator Moni Toyarn, Shadowflight, Robin White, and many, many others. What? She demands, finally turning to give the person her attention, and finds she's facing a very handsome human man, taller than her, but with blank white eyes and strange markings on his face. She can feel his gaze nail her right in the eyes, and the clouds that make up her hair spike and storm as she can feel the crazy beast stare her right in the soul. No man should have a gaze that intense, especially with blank eyes. I didn't order any of that. I may not like you undaunted, but I'm not stupid enough to get into a war with a military power. I've got some tough girls on the street. You have armored vehicles and artillery. That means I lose, and I'm not dumb enough to take a fight. I'm guaranteed to lose. Let me guess, this is the part where you start naming people that would want to frame you for things and try to use me to take out your rivals? What do you think this is? That stupid cartoon? Things don't work like that here. Stunts like that gets a girl a knife in the ribs while she sleeps. There are rules, and if you break them, then you're not protected by them. Yes, because career criminals are well known for following the rules. If you're gonna throw slanderous accusations around, then we're going to be talking to my lawyers. I'm afraid, madam, that we have something in common. I don't take fights I'm guaranteed to lose, he says, and she smirks. So you're claiming, for the record, mind you. He indicates a breast pocket on his shirt that has a communicator sticking out with the camera directly pointed at her. Miss Mangler is suddenly much more grateful. Her fist impulse is always deny. Deny, deny. That you have nothing to do with the orders coming from your computer that have caused attacks on both undaunted assets and local civilians? That is correct, even if it uses wording that you yourself have been known to state on public record. A lot of my girls may be a lot more muscle than mine, but that doesn't make them completely stupid. If it was phrased all wrong, they'd ask me about it, and whoever did this clearly doesn't want that to happen. Clearly, the man says. So now I am going to formally ask your permission to go through the records and files of your computer to determine who's so eager to frame you? Mangler pauses, considers, and tries to avoid letting the panic on her face show. That's not good. Provided it's done with me and my own computer expert there to make sure you're not just ripping out private information. I do my banking from that computer, and I don't trust you, she says. She can't flat out deny it, as they're looking for evidence to exonerate her technically, But if they can just run through that computer, then there's enough there to bury her. Very well then. Thank you for your patience, madam. He says, and for a moment she thinks he's going to let her have some time to get things done. Call up your expert. I'll bring in my own and we'll have this settled and done within the hour. Hopefully? Hopefully, she says for the camera. Inside her mind, she's mixing every language she knows for swear words. Scene change. Conclusive end to all. And in what manner is it wise to let a subterfuge agent be so well known? Why impersonate them on such a massive scale? She questions the private stream as she tries to understand the exact method to this madness. Things had changed shockingly quickly by her estimate. And if not for the codes she received, to say nothing of the reports she had read, she would have assumed that she was under enemy control as they tried to subvert her. The biggest downside to entering stasis was that you miss things, but the deeply private code that unending reign of retribution had used told her everything was true. It wasn't in any official files, it wasn't written anywhere, but in the private whispering between two girls that were cousins by blood, sisters by choice, and friends through sheer stubborn work. The tales she had read from her now much younger sister were fantastical, but had evidence for them. It was just so hard to adjust. Because if you can't be unseen, be unremarkable. Private Stream does a bunch of things as a bodyguard and assistant identity. It means that wherever a private stream is recognized, it will be expected and uninteresting for them to be there, with armor, weapons, and backup. This lets us put armed forces just about anywhere, and couple that with how much smaller a stream is from the standard galactic citizen, and we simply pass under their gaze unless they regularly deal with the smaller races, and even the smaller races ignore us. They're so used to looking up that people their own size will be missed. It's so silly. Only the really tall races, like the Canadors or Lidris, regularly spot us. And even then, they assume we're just there to protect something, run a message, or be there for social clout. It's perfect. Really. You don't need to be physically invisible if you're socially invisible. If you look like you belong, then you can do almost anything. But if you're invisible and start picking things up, people might notice, Private Stream explains. I see. And the best way to look like you belong is to actually belong in your own way. No one looks twice at a janitor spending a long time in an office. They just assume they're cleaning. If an assistant rushes by with a snack for a CEO and mentioning that they're in a bad mood, then no one will look for them, giving a lot of time for the assistant who just assassinated the CEO to get away. And the move of making your character a private stream seem endearing is, if people want you around, they won't try to keep you out, Private Stream says. And in private areas, they may assume someone else brought you in. In that case, the time it takes for them to confirm or deny things can buy an agent enough time to infiltrate. And if no one is giving the private stream the benefit of the doubt and keeping eyes always on them, even better, then someone actually sneaking gets in, and with everyone distracted by the child, the mission goes off perfectly. You just have an answer to everything, don't you? Not everything, just all things. That means the same thing. Maybe. Not maybe, yes. That means the same thing. Semantics. No, not semantics, just flat facts. Why are you distracted? Private Stream suddenly asks, and she pauses before looking back. Hello, the unfamiliar Canador woman says. Conclusive end to all turns back to Private Stream, who's smiling. See how well it works? I think I do. Well played, little one. You're welcome, the Canador says, and she blinks before turning back to the Canador as the Private Stream slumps. You're joking, she says as she realizes she's been talking to the Canador this entire time. Nope. It's pretty insane how thorough the deception goes with the Private Stream initiative, the Canador admits. I'm Jewel Fleshrender, by the way. I suppose as an ally, I can tell you my name is Conclusive End to All. How about CETA? CETA. Humans use a lot of communications in their native language of English. I've learned it, and in English, conclusive end to all start with the letters that make up the name CETA. It's a post-translation abbreviation. CETA will do, she says. So why is a Canador operating as a private stream? Mostly amusement on my part. I served in many power armor divisions in one force or another over my life, so I was looking for more of a change than rank, pay, and uniform. So when I was approached with an offer to make complimentary equipment for my implants, I took it. And now here I stand, a puppet mistress, master of stealth and surprise backup for myself, Jules says as she flattens the collar of her jacket to reveal circuitry on the underside. Most private streams work on control couches, but with my more extensive implants, I use a modified drone control system. It's perfect. Not to mention, you get a very interesting point of view on things. I've spent my life bending my neck to look down at others. Having them needing to do the same for me is a heady experience. Trust me when I say that simply being small is stealth enough for most situations, Jewel remarks as she walks up, her claws now audibly clicking on the floor, and picks up the comparatively tiny drone she had used to be private stream. She flips her collar back up and the puppet comes back to life and waves at Sita cheerfully. What do you think? A good show, isn't it? They ask as one. I haven't seen anywhere near enough shows to compare them to. Pity that. There's an old school artistry in puppetry, especially axiom puppets. If you insist, Sita says, and Jewel shrugs. Not my place to convince you. Still, think you'd be up for trying local cuisine? Jewel asks. I've had my rations for the day. I'm fine. You're traveling with humans and not trying new foods? They eat poison. They've synthesized non-toxic variants to give us all their flavor and none of the fuss. Jewel protests. That stuff even tastes good to me, and I've tried both the real deal and the synthetic. It's not necessary. It's entirely necessary. You need to eat to live, and if you have to do something, you may as well enjoy it. OOCS Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 370. Capes and Conundrums. There is a great deal of trepidation as Miss Mangler has called in not only her personal technician, but her lawyer to watch over the proceedings as Harold brings in an undaunted technician to go into Miss Mangler's computer. And the password is? The technician asks, and Miss Mangler's turn to Miss Mangler herself, who quickly inputs things and they're in the computer. All right, this is just a basic check to... A message pops up. What timing? Harold notes. My private communications are not for... But that's exactly what we're looking for. Potential communications to signify attacks and the timestamps of them. We just need to correlate you not being at the computer when these commands went out and you get exonerated. Harold says, okay, the first communication went out at... This time, both the computer and Miss Mangler's communicator go off at the same time. The message opens itself on the computer and states, do not ignore me. Are we interrupting something? Harold asks. A great deal, actually. Well, I hate to be a bother. Answer the call. We'll wait. Harold states in a genial tone. Everyone turns to him. If this is just a misunderstanding or the sabotage of a hostile party, then there's nothing to be worried about, is there? There is a great deal to be worried about. I'm not naive. Men are just as capable of women of malice. Is this an anecdotal observation, or are you claiming experience in the field of malice? Harold asks. Everything you say is bait to a trap, Miss Mangler mutters. It's almost like we don't like each other. Funny that, Harold replies, and Miss Mangler glares at him, then answers her communicator. Hello, I'm currently hosting the Undaunted, who are far from happy with me. Care to call back later? She says immediately, and there's a pause on the other end. Then the line goes dead. She then pockets the device and smiles at them. Now then, I believe we were going through my files. Of course, get us her communications with her crewwomen and the timing. Then we'll need the internal security for the time and locate where Miss Mangler her was at that time. Harold tells the undaunted technician, who nods. Of course, the technician says. Scene change, Miss Mangler, 15 minutes later. She lets out a relieved sigh as the undaunted leave without a fuss. There had been so much pressure. If she had the ability to sweat, she would have been soaked in it. As it was, she merely had a cold breeze blowing around her. Thankfully, she had been able to play it off as wanting to be cool on the blistering, hot world, but not blow all her money on air conditioning. That was close, her technician says. Yeah. Thankfully, the undaunted are like the bullets they're so fond of. If they miss their target, they keep rushing forwards until they hit something. We'll keep an eye on them, see what exactly they're aiming at. And if it's something we don't like, we guide them away. If it's something we'd like to get hit, then we just let it happen. She notes and then nods to her computer. Sweep it for bugs or viruses. I don't trust that we didn't catch something. Bit paranoid, boss. Don't care. Check the hardware and then restart it from a previous state. Better to lose a few hours of communications than to have some kind of virus in the system, Miss Mangler says, and her girl gets to work. Need me to stick around? Or back to my office? Her lawyer asks. Stick around. I get the feeling today's just getting started, Mangler says before activating her communicator and putting in the return call number for her friend. All right, what do you want? What made you think that attacking undaunted assets and civilians was a good idea by any stretch of the imagination? The voice of the man on the other end is tightly controlled and deeply furious. I didn't. Someone hacked my computer and sent out the command, and you nearly gave yourself away calling me while they were here. And how was I supposed to know that? You weren't, but we can't keep our business arrangement if your first impulse is to call me from your office. We're just lucky I had my own technician here while I was fending off their little raid. Otherwise, their own might have gone deeper than the communication logs. I've never been more thankful for your slang terms. Neither have I. The undaunted are direct but dangerous. Thankfully, they don't have much of a grasp of subtlety beyond seduction. Scene change. Harold. Feeling vaguely insulted at that last little touch of things, Harold makes a few personal notes as the information from the tiny bug he planted on Miss Mangler herself. He's going to have to raid her laundry basket tonight, but this will do for now. Who's trying to expose us then? I don't know, but the undaunted sweeping through has tainted everything in the area and messed things up. Their oily fingers are all over the keys, and there's no way to learn what's... I know that computer of yours has a scanning feature, recording whoever sits there. Don't play me. The problem with that is that it hasn't worked. It gives a heads up when an unknown user uses my system. But there was nothing. No visual, no audio, no DNA trace, and no Axiom signature. It's like a spirit hacked my systems and sent more than a few of my girls to their death attacking military targets the hell out of nowhere. Perhaps not a spirit. Have you scanned the area for the traces a cloaken might leave behind? A strand from a feather? A scale? Those would have been picked up by my system, she tells the other person who sighs. Harold raises an eyebrow. He then senses and turns to his right. Insight beyond simple understanding is there. He sets the device to continue recording, but mutes the speaker. So, was this your doing? He asks her. She nods. People have died. Murderers have died. Killers doing terrible things have died, she answers. Harold can see the presence of her friend whispering in her ear. Now you have an excuse to watch them both. They're a part of the puzzle. So this whole thing was a trap against those trying to keep the natives from being restored? He asks and she nods. Your friend, is her name Isma? Or perhaps, I should say, Grandmother Isma? She's laughing, Insight says. That's not an answer. She just stopped and said no? Insight says, and Harold considers. Then why did she use the Zetan language before? She knows you know it, Insight says. Does she know me? She does, and she says you're a good friend. She still needs to be held to some kind of account for getting people killed needlessly. When you meet her, it will be the furthest thing from your mind. When you realize it's her, you will no longer care, Insight states. She's a primal, isn't she? Freshly ascended. She's laughing again. She just said she's given away too many spoilers. She's the whimperous primal? Harold concludes and Insight suddenly jerks. Are you? She's never gasped before. Not without it being part of a story she's telling me. Are you telling me I just startled a creature beyond space and time? Yes. Well, score one for me, I guess, Harold notes. Is she willing to give a time frame for when we first meet? Eventually, Insight says, and Harold sighs. I suppose I had that one coming. By the way, how many bugs did you plant? Insight asks, and Harold raises an eyebrow. The presence had asked that question. Yes, this is a hint. She's not all-knowing, Harold notes in thought, considers, and then smiles. I don't think I should say, I don't know how temporal mechanics work, so if you don't already know, then you might never know, he says, and Insight tilts her head at a very odd answer she's getting. She says that there's a point that she will know, but not in her now. I don't understand, she asks, and Harold thinks. Then it implies that she leaves the other direction at some point, and you're talking to her that will eventually leave. She says that's wrong. That's not how it works, Insight says, and Harold just gives her a confused look. This is just getting weirder and weirder. Okay then, I'm glad I'm recording what I'm doing with a body cam, otherwise I'd have to repeat this mind-twisting conversation. And she's giggling, Insight says. Of course she is, Harold replies. Can you tell her I don't appreciate being manipulated by someone I can't smack upside the head for being a fool? The giggles are a heavy laugh now. Right, should have seen that coming, really. Scene change. Admiral Hainala, Observer Wu, and Captain Rangi. Oh my, Observer Wu notes. Does it ever end? Captain Rangi asks in amusement. No, it doesn't. Still, time-traveling invisible friends to an invisible snake woman is a new one. One that has all but admitted she is a goddess from the future yet to emerge. That's a special kind of crazy, Admiral Hainala says with a smile. Still not as crazy as that first week of setup. I had so many people wandering in, and there's no end to the dumb rumors even now of how if you win a contest one way or another, then you get to date an undaunted. And how often do those kinds of rumors come up? Observer Wu asks. Too often, and all too often because some bored civilian starts wishing such a thing were true, is partially overheard, and in the inevitable game of broken telephone, convinces half the city that there's an orgy waiting for them if they impress us. It has mostly become a game tourist play, but the locals occasionally get swept up in it now and again. Admiral Hainala states before stroking his mustache. I take it a few of them propose to have that date with you? It's flattering, but distracting. I have my duties. It's the mustache, isn't it? I've heard some offers relating to my tattoos. Captain Rangi asks, and Admiral Hainala chuckles. It is, Admiral Hainala remarks. Regardless, there is trouble, and in an entirely new flavor. And what was your previously most interesting bit of trouble prior to this? A Frost Aramenta had a severe case of dissociative identity disorder and latched on to the idea of a cold-based supervillain. The thermal shock she was forcing into the streets and buildings from the sheer temperature fluctuations was causing severe damage. I would assume she would try to hunt down the individuals dressing like Batman, correct? Not quite. The disassociation caused her to lash out and wasn't coherently put together. This isn't like the television show's idea of a split personality. It was a confused and hurt woman lashing out and unable to recognize herself. She heard a few people calling her Mr. Freeze or Captain Cold and basically just went with that until that too faded, then getting reminded as her own actions caught up to her and the cycle had to be broken to calm her down and help her out of the episode. Where is she now? In the care of her family and on another world entirely, meaning a thorough case of not my problem anymore? And how was that the most interesting case? Due entirely to how things went. How many world-class misunderstandings there were that even open communication couldn't clear up, and how ultimately tragic and pointless it all was. She wasn't going for anything, wasn't the type to lash out at people, but got swept up in a terrible moment of weakness to cause immense amounts of damage. So you're saying that people with mental issues are even more at risk in the wider galaxy? Captain Rangi asks. I'm saying that easy access to effective magic means that someone with delusions or other mental instabilities can cause all sorts of harm. There are many reasons that the official policy is to ensure that our psychiatrists remain busy and we always hire more. And that is just one of them. Another is the fact that when it comes to highly trained murder machines, you also want them nice and stable. We adopted the policy early and hard. And the fact you ran into multiple threats that attack the mind afterwards made it even more important.